Hello everyone, welcome to your next section. Today we are going to extend upon our knowledge of pandas by using a couple of more functions and commands. The last section you learned how to do basic indexing and some basic loading and manipulation. So today I'm going to show you more advanced features of how to index, how to extract only columns or rows that have specific values or that have some sort of conditional statement that you can input into them to make sure that the values are what you want them to be, or be like very specific in selection of values from rows and columns. We're going to show you how to manipulate data frames a little bit more by appending to the end of a data frame, concatenating two data frames together, and then we're going to show you how to eventually dump all of this information into a CSV file. So this is really to try and complete a general basic understanding of how to manipulate pandas data frames so that you can then go on and start to look at this yourself. In our next section, we're going to be talking about a lot about statistics. So having this good foundational knowledge of data frames in pandas will make it a lot easier for you to run the statistics that you're going to be running later in this section. So without further ado, guys, what we're going to learn today is we're going to learn how to replace data in our data frame. So we have a value and we want to change the value. We're going to learn how to append to the end of our data frame by adding a row or two. We're going to learn concatenation, which is essentially like merging two data frames together. We're going to learn how to select values, rows, and columns in a data frame based on very specific conditions. And then lastly, we're going to try and dump this into a CSV file. Okay, so for definitions today, all you're going to really need to know is some stuff that you're probably already slightly familiar with. You're going to learn how to append. Appending, like in a list, is just like it is in a data frame where rather than it goes on the end of the list, the rows are going to go at the bottom of the file or the data frame. Concatenation is about merging two data frames together. And lastly, we're going to show you how to do some replacement values. So that way you say, okay, well, anything above 1 million in my data frame is probably erroneous data in some way. So let's just change that to a 0 or, an empty value or something like that. Okay, guys, with that, we're going to now hop into our syntax section. And I'm going to show you how some of these commands work. So the first thing you see here is we're importing pandas, just like we've done for the past couple of sections. We are renaming pandas as PD, so it's easier for us to do smaller calls like that. So if we didn't have this as PD here, we could just write pandas, and this would work just fine. Remember this line is how to load in a CSV file. We used pathing in our example last section, where I actually showed you how to go from your home directory all the way down into where this file actually is. And you'll see in this example that I've made a duplicate data frame. I have made one data frame called data frame and another one called data frame 2, and that's mostly to just illustrate later on in this syntax how we're gonna merge these two data frames together using concatenation. Okay, so the first command I'm going to show you is the head command. What head does is it gives you the top n amount of rows so that you can kind of just preview what your data is looking like. You can put a parameter in here to tell it how many rows you want it to return, but I think default it returns 10 if memory serves. It might return 5 or something like that. Regardless, this will give you a preview of your top X amount of rows. You can also do .tail, which is the exact same command, except rather than the top rows, it's going to give you the bottom. So it's usually nice to check your data when you first load it by both looking at the head and the tail to make sure that everything is consistent and there's no weird stuff going on with rows later on. Okay. What I'm showing you here is what the data frame looks like, or at least the preview of it with head. I'm showing you 5 rows here. It's similar to what we did last time, but I want to show you this because it's useful for illustration when I'm talking about this next function, which is called replace. So we have a data frame, and let's say we found that there was a couple of inaccuracies or in our data collection, or we need to replace some values, and we want to do that as easily as we can. So we use the .replace function for our data frame. You'll notice that .replace is delineated by a comma, and you have 2 sets of lists here. So what this is saying is I want to replace these values, the value 125 and 250, anywhere in the data frame. You can have it go to a specific column if you want, or call to a specific column. But for now, we're saying in the entire data frame, if you encounter the number 125, I want you to replace 125 with 130. And if you encounter the number 250 anywhere, I want you to replace that 250 with the number 225. Now you can have it replace, it doesn't have to be integer to integer, so you can replace it with a string, for instance, or a float, what have you. But the point is that you use the dot replace, you have this comma, which delineates between the values that it's looking for and the values that it wants to replace. And if you have more than one value, you wrap it in a list. So, and then 125 is going to relate to 130, and 250 is going to relate to 225. Okay? That's how the replace function works in Pandas. Next, you remember that we use this dot location function to say, like, I wanted, the first 3 rows in this specific column. What I'm showing you here is a conditional statement with dot location where you can say, this is saying I want all rows and all columns where the age of the person is at least 20 years old. So it wouldn't show John, and it would show Michael, actually, in this case, because 20 is greater than, because it is greater than. Consequently, you can also use the location function and create multiple conditions in order for in order for it to look through. So if you wanted to know, like, I wanted people that are over 20 and have a certain weight range, how you would do that is you have your dot location function, which is wrapped in these square quotes here. And you'll notice this ampersand sign here. That's saying that we have one condition here and another condition here that it's going to be looking for. The first one is similar to what we were looking at above, which was age greater than 20. You notice that I've wrapped this in just regular braces here. It's just a way to assure that Python is evaluating this logical statement separate from this logical statement. There's no weirdness going on. So you notice that I also have the quotes wrapped around here, and then this the condition statement is also double quoted at the end, and then the square braces are ending off the dot location function. And this extra conditional statement is now saying I also only want rows where their weight is either 100 or 150. So you're seeing this dot is in function, or dot in feature, and that's just like, it is 5 in a list. That's essentially, remember how we use the in commands for other things? That's essentially what it's doing here. So this should only show you rows where people are over 20 years old and have a weight of 100 or 150. And we'll see how that looks when we run this code later, okay? Next, we have the dot append function. This is just adding rows to our data frame. So I'm saying here just like add rows 1 to 3 to our current data frame here, and it's really that simple. In order for the append to work, usually you want to make sure that you give it all of the values that it needs for a row. Otherwise, if you don't, like, some values are going to return as not a number for some cells. So it's important that when you're appending complete information. If we wanted to rename columns, how we do that is using the dot rename function. So we have dot rename and these regular braces, and we say columns equals, and we provided a dictionary. And this is what the key value pair is, what the column currently is and what we want the column to change to. And you notice this is a dictionary, so we can have multiple values here. We can change weight and name too by just adding a column and providing another key value pair. So in this example, the df.rename is going to change age here to score, and then we'd have to reference it accordingly. Lastly, if you were to, well, not lastly, but if you were to have 2 data frames that you wanted to put together because they were from 2 different sources, or 2 different days, what have you, you can load both of those data frames together, load both of those data frames into variables like we did here with df and df2. We then use the pandas.concatenate function, and we pass it a list with the data frames that we want to concatenate together. So this will then give us, this information here, and then it'll be replicated for df2, which will still have Michael and so on, but it's going to be added on together. Why? Because df2 is really just the same data frame, and I just wanted to show you how to chunk on pieces of data on top of each other. Second last function here is, remember how sometimes we have those NaN numbers? That's when a cell is empty. That means not a number. If you don't want not a numbers and you wanted to replace not a numbers with something else, I'm saying in this case replace not a numbers with 0. That's how you would do it here. It will look through the entire data frame and replace all not a numbers with 0. And then lastly, this last command is how to export your data frame as a CSV. And it's really quite simple. Remember how we had pandas.read_CSV and we gave it a name? All we do in this case is we say data frame object to CSV, and then we give it the CSV path. We can, if we give it just this path here, it's going to load into our current directory, but we can give it a path so that it will load into other directories as well. Okay guys, with that, let's hop into terminal and start playing around with this information a bit, okay? Alright everyone, here we are. So I'm going to go into Python right now. I'm in my root directory, so I'm going to show you how to path properly once we get to reading in the CSV file. First off, we need to import Pandas, so we do that with our import syntax. Import, then the name of the package, and I'm going to rename this package to PD so it's a little bit easier for us to write and do stuff with. So first off, we're going to create a data frame. So data frame is the name of our variable. We use the equal sign operator. We're calling our Pandas library, and we're asking it to give us its read CSV function. I just pressed tab there and it actually autocomplete for me. If I just have read C, it'll show you the other things that are available to it. So you can read from clipboard too, which is kind of neat. So we're going to give it the path. Because I am not in the directory where this CSV file is, I know where it is though. It's going to be in my desktop. I'm going to go to Udemy, Python, scripts. You should find where your folders are as well. And then it was testdata.csv. We're going to close that brace, and that definitely worked. Okay, so we're going to create another data frame, so we use the concatenation thing later on. So I'm just going to store that in there for now. So first thing I want to show you guys is that head and tail function. So first if we go df head, it's going to give us the first 5 rows. So the default is in Python to give the first 5 rows if you don't pass any variables in. df.head of 2 is going to give you the first 2 rows, the top 2 rows. So that indeed works as we expected it to, and this looks very similar to our syntax previously. If we do df.tail, it's going to give us the bottom 5 rows. Now this is a 7 row file, so it gets to the bottom of 6 and goes all the way up. So that's how you look at both the top and bottom of your data. This is really useful when you first load in your information and you want to make sure that all the formatting is there and you loaded it in right, or there isn't any issues with the data itself. This is a great way to just preview that information. Okay, so let's just print that data frame there, look at it there. So first what we want to do is we're going to try and replace some values. So we use the df.replace function, just like it was in a list, but rather than replacing, one value, we want to replace a set of values. So the first object that we pass into it is a list of the values that we want to actually be replaced, and then we give it a list of what we want those values to be replaced with. So in this case, we wanted to replace the number 125 and 250 with 130 and 225, okay? So how this works is just like in our syntax. This is the value we want to replace, and then this next one, 130, is what we want to replace it with. And this is looking through the entire data frame right now. If we could give more specifics and say, oh, we only want like people with certain age to replace these values with, or something to that effect. So when we do that, what do we have here? We see that 130 has been replaced, or 125 has been replaced with 130, and 225 has been replaced by 250, okay? We do notice, though, that this didn't save. It just, like, changed the number. So if we wanted to adjust this and store the results in our data frame, we would have to do the dot, pass it back into the object right there. So let's go over the location function. I'm going to just show you the more complex one because we looked at that a little bit earlier. So first, if we wanted to only get values that were, for people that were at least age 20 or something like that, we go location, we wrap it in these regular braces, we say we want age, and we are giving the condition that age must be greater than 20, and because we want to give another parameter, we're going to give df, well, first we have to wrap it in regular braces, df weight, and that will be, we want it dot is in 100. So we only want people that are like 100 pounds in this example here. Okay, so what happens when we do this? Oh, had a little bit of an issue. So what happened here? Let's see. It's saying you pass an integer in the is in. That's because we need to, pass it a list, right? Yeah, it needs to be a list, not an integer. There we go. And that's because it was looking for that. It needs a list for that to work. I'm now going to show you how to do the append. So df.append. So first we want to do append just like the first 3 lines. That's what this looks like, or first 2 lines. That's what that looks like there. So df.append df of 1 to 3, and then this should add a row, 2 rows to the bottom of our data frame. It indeed did there. Does it save it? No, it doesn't. So remember, you have to save that object if you want it to work. I'm going to show you the rename function now. df.rename, and that is we go columns equals, and we give it a key value pair. So the key is the actual column and the value is score. And because we have, we can do multiple columns with that. Oh, what did we miss? Oh, we missed that there. There we go. And so now score has been replaced with age, but it doesn't save. We have to make sure we save that if we want it to work. The last 2 things I'm going to show you are the concatenate. So with concatenate, we call pandas and go concat. We give it this function, and we provide to it a list of data frames that we want to be concatenated together. And you see there we have kind of a replication because there's 2 data frames here, right? And that doesn't save as well. We don't have any filling in of numbers here, so we don't have to worry about that. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to save your CSV file. So you take a data frame, you go dataframe.toCSV as opposed to read CSV, and then you give it the path that you want it to be saved to. So I'm going to save it back where the other stuff was. Desktop, Udemy, Python, scripts, and it's new CSV.csv. And that actually saved it, so you can go into your folder and check that for yourself. Okay guys, let's just wrap up here. What did we learn today? We learned some more advanced functions with pandas. We learned how to append, concatenate, and replace data in data frames. We also learned a little bit more about advanced manipulation and slicing techniques and how to dump our data. In our next class, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about statistics. So you're going to start to try and learn how to use those statistical applications with your data frames in a couple of classes. See you then.